Hi intro students. This video is to walk you through, just so you can see me. This video is to walk you through doing your model building from the drawings that you were sent in the mail. So first we have your floor plan, and that is what we're going to put down on the base of the model. The other items that we have elevation drawings as well, and those will be what we set up for the structure. I happen to house my pins in this jar, but you need the pins that we talked about before. I also have a type of ruler here that I can cut. The metal ruler is what was indicated in your kit. And this has a cork back cork back on it so that it doesn't slide. The ruler won't slide. You have your X-Acto knife in your kit, and mine doesn't happen to have any blades in it right now. You do have replacements. My container here looks different because I ordered it in bulk. But you have your your blade, and you're going to twist and turn this part so that it opens up enough to get your blade in there, and then you'll slip your blade in. So I'm just opening it up enough that I can slide it in. There we go. Okay, so it's going to be slid in, and then you just go ahead and you're going to tighten that up. All right. Okay. Now I have a type of board underneath it that you can cut on, because you don't want to do it any kind of table that you're going to worry about wrecking. Even if you had a piece of cardboard, be very careful. I would probably do it on the floor instead, but even then you don't want to wreck your floor. There are smaller little pads that you can get away with. It's just easier for me for the video to spread things out, but there are small ones that you can use to cut out. But again, mostly importantly, just keep in mind what you're cutting on and try not to wreck anything underneath it. So we're going to start at a few places here. The first thing is pretty easy. We'll go ahead and we are going to put your floor plan down on this side because it doesn't have the writing. For the most part, whatever board you get, they should be relatively square. And this one, wasn't sure, so I'm going to cut off of it already. Yeah, so I'm just leaning it up against the corner of it. If it was even something like this, and you can see how it's hanging over, it doesn't really matter. And in fact, I'm going to extend it so that when you guys have your model set, I'm measuring it at about 1.5 inches coming over from the edge. So when you do that, measure 1.5 inches out past the farthest part. So for instance here, I'm going to go ahead and just by the word scale here, we'll go ahead and I'm going to set it at about 1.5 inches. Now what you can do with your triangle, I'm going to go ahead and grab, and remember you don't have a pink one like I do, but I've got it because then you can see it a little better in the video. Because I know this is relatively square, I'm setting this up here so that I know that the piece I cut won't be too far off along here. You don't want to cut with your triangle because your blade will be very sharp and you could cut this. You have to use it with something that isn't going to get cut up. I have a metal ruler. If I get in here, there's a wooden one that even has a metal edge to it. All right, and then I'm going to come out about 1.5 inches again over here on this side. It gives you more room to work with. And since I've already had it square to this, I'm going to give myself a guideline. All right. I'm going to take my tape, and you'll have to take it out of the container. It's going to have that tab in it. So you want to take that and you're going to pull it off because we have to start it so that it's both sides are sticky. So you'll pull it past the writing, and you want to see that both sides are sticky, and they are. So you'll use it just like regular Scotch tape. I'll go ahead and I'm just going to throw that away. And what you'll do is with this piece, go ahead and put it on the back of your paper I'm going to go ahead and mostly focus on the edges to begin with, because we don't want those to lift up on us. Okay, so right now I have the tape. I'll try to tip it in the light here so you can see the spots that I have the tape on. I missed a little bit over on this side, so I'll come over here with it. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to put a couple pieces in the middle also, so it doesn't lift up. I'll go ahead and do that. Now I happen to have a little bit of a ripple here. I'll just try to flatten that as much as I can. I'm going to turn it back over and lay it down on the model. And I'm confident in where I'm laying it because I did those guidelines, right? So you'll have a platform like this. I'll go ahead and I'm going to cut that, not using the triangle, but again, using some kind of ruler that I know I won't mess up. These blades, you should be able to get through putting together your floor and your walls and then maybe change out the blade. But don't think that, you know, it's always good to conserve material, but you're more likely to cut yourself on a dull blade than a sharp blade, and it's good to change this out so it cuts through. Okay, the key here, if you watched any of the videos previously, they show you how to angle and cut and score. So I'm going to reiterate that. You're scoring it means that you put, I've got my ruler on the line that I drew previously, and I'm holding it down with my left hand. I'm right-handed. I'm going to puncture it, and I'm simply just pushing hard enough to make it through the top core of the foam. I'm not trying to get all the way through the material, just part way through. Now, the ruler's still in place. I'll go back through again, and now I'm making it so that I've cut through. And I'm not doing something like this. I'm not doing something like this. I'm going straight down, and you can hear it, and you can see that it's going to flip up a little bit. This is starting to lift up. So take your time. If it bunches up at all, that's for two reasons. Either this is getting dull, or it's just the quality of the foam core. The cheaper the foam core, the more this may bunch up. So you can see that's a pretty clean cut. It isn't what we consider a bevel. So when I was cutting it, it was like this, not like this. You don't want to bevel it. If it bunches up a little bit your first time, don't stress about it. It's not a huge deal. You're just trying to get the point across of your first model. Now I'm holding my ruler, and my actual board ends here. Just take your time, and you can slide the ruler down if you have a shorter ruler like I do. Okay, so I'm just scoring it through. I'm going to go through again. I would plan like 3 times to get yourself through it. And because I have this little section here, I'm just going to take this, I'm going to put it back in, and now I'm just going to the edge. And I'm trying not to go over too far past this line because I want to reuse the other parts of my board for my walls. Okay, so that's how we'll work it. And you now have your base. Okay, and this is a very doable part to accomplish quite quickly, and it feels pretty darn good, right? Okay, so right now you're seeing that you have your floor plan. We used double-sided tape on it. We attached it down, leaving about 1.5 inches past our edges so that it's a nice firm base. You'll need to, in addition, we've got scale. There's some other labels you need to make sure that you put in, like your North symbol and all that. So if you do it right, you should just be able to use it from what you were given, and then you can put your name on there, okay? All right, so we've got that. Now the next part are the walls, because we have to give it, this is what we call two-dimensional. We have length and we have width, but we don't have height, and we want to understand our room in height. I'll go ahead and I'm going to start with the west elevation. So a couple things. When you cut your strips, go longer on the end because you're going to have to insert your wall and attach them in, and I'll show you what I mean by that. The other thing is you have people in your elevations. You want to keep one of those two people because you're going to put a person in your model. So be sure that when you're trimming this out, that you're careful with how, you don't mess up. If not, you can sketch out a person, but these are a lot easier to use. So somebody walking or somebody just standing, whichever one you'd want. When you see the inner line on these, this outside portion, if I were to, I'm going to find a little highlighter here, and I think I'm going to highlight it for our demo so that you understand how you're going to cut out these openings. So I'm going to highlight in green here the parts that are trim. Now, you're not going to highlight it in green. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm simply doing it for my model so that you understand that wherever there's those parts that were drawn in, I've highlighted it in green. You're cutting it out in the opening because that's what is in your drawing, right? So this is our west wall. You've drawn, or you built, I drew it at 3 feet. You drew it on your floor plan at 3 feet. This section from here to here, if you're not sure where to cut, you should be checking that. I'm going to grab my scale out here so you can see that. You should be seeing that that is, here's my 1/2 inch scale. You should be seeing that from the beginning to the end, that's also 3 feet. And that's why I've highlighted the green. So don't do the outside of the trim. Make sure that you're seeing this 3-foot opening. And it's the same thing here. Right, so for the window, when you have the window, I'll highlight the parts that are the trim. So it's the same thing with this. If I measure the floor plan and I see that that opening is the 5 feet, I could go back to this and see the 5 foot on that opening. So it's the same thing. It's how they have to read together. And when you put your foam core in, my cap here, this is the part that lines up and matches with that, in this case, the north elevation. So that's how that will work. I just want you to understand how you would cut out the opening. We'll make another notation here. When you go through, maybe actually I'll start on the north wall. When you make your notation here, what I want you to see when you have this wall, once you trim off your line along this bottom line here, you may not see up from down. If this is our, what we call a sill, right? This is our sill. We should be measuring that sill is, it looks like 24 inches or 2 feet. So the distance from the floor to the bottom there is 2 feet. When you come in, I want you to see how that is the 2 feet off the ground. So make sure that you have your sill height 2 feet off the ground. You don't want to put it upside down. I would mark on all of your elevations, you have the floor and you have the ceiling. You can always erase that later, but this will be good to note. I'll go back to that west that I started with. So I'm going to do a quick floor and I'm going to do a ceiling. And we know, just as a reminder, that this is an 8-foot ceiling. This is a reminder for that. You're not marking any drawing, but just so you can remember, we have an 8-foot ceiling we're working with. So when you cut your pieces, you're just going to cut along here, and that will give you your 8-foot high ceiling. All right, I'm going to go into my south. So I'll do the floor, ceiling. And again, it's just this inside part that you're cutting out, and then you can leave that here so we can see the trim. There's those. And then the east one, yeah, doesn't really matter, I guess, so much on this one for now because there isn't a whole lot with it. But let's just still be accurate to what we have here, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lay those down. And what I'll do first is I'm going to go ahead and attach it onto my foam core. But what I'll do first, I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to lay it on the top where I did the ceiling. And I'm going to show you, I'll lift it up and show you what I did. But I'm taking my straight edge, I'm lining it up with the line that I drew, and I'm going to do a cut here and just take it right along. Not a whole lot of scoring to do with that, right? Because it's just a paper. We're going to run it this way. Now I might get confused once I lose my direction name, which here says east. I'll go ahead and even write east wall on my paper so I can remember which way to go. Go ahead and we'll put this down. Again, I'm lining up my ruler right on the line. And now I have a strip. Okay? I have a strip of the east wall, the floor, the ceiling. I have an end line I can see. So what would have started like this, like on the south elevation, for instance, I took and I cut the line across here, and I took and cut the line across here. So now when I go back to it, I have exactly 8 feet high on my ceiling. Or I could turn it this way if I wanted, put the 0 on the floor, and go up to the 8-foot mark. As I mentioned earlier, you want to have edges that overlap. So what I would suggest you do is, let's look at the wall here. Now we are on the, there's the north, here's the east. You can see how it overlaps on the plan here, and it overlaps this direction. So when you set it up, I'm going to put it right to my floor plan, and I'm going to go out a little bit farther this way, and I'll come out a little bit further that way. Then I know that I have a space to pin into my adjacent piece. And some of that will make a little bit more sense when I go through it. It doesn't have to be exact on that like it did with the floor and the ceiling. So I have a bunch of extra pieces here. I'm going to get rid of them as I go so it's not too cumbersome and messy with the work surface. But I would keep, when you get your extra pieces of your foam core, especially from what you have in like your door openings and things, keep those, because we're going to actually make furniture when we start figuring out a client and what the client wants in this room, and then we'll go from there. So if I go ahead and I will set up my east wall. Now the east wall, there's not a whole lot going here. I'm going to set it up on foam core so that it's now flimsy like this. So what I'll do is I'm going to put double-sided tape on this. And I'm going to put this right up along the edge. Now I'm going to talk about the other rooms in a minute, because those, in fact, you want to be a little careful about those. If you put tape in a spot where you're going to cut out a window or a door, it's not going to work so well. So that's something to address as we go through this demonstration. Okay, so this is an idea, if you can see the reflection, about where I've put tape. I'm going to go ahead and I have it pretty square to this. If you weren't sure if that was square, you could take your triangle and you could look and see how square it is, and it looks pretty good. It fits within that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lay it down. I'm running it with along the bottom corner, and I've got it pretty close up to the edge. So I'm going to do something like this. It looks like it dimpled a little bit, but that's okay. Our idea isn't perfection here. It's just more about getting it down, getting an idea of the 3D. Okay, so we've got this as the east wall. I'm going to follow that line again. One of the things sometimes people do is you could do it where you just simply tack it down and then cut it if, you know, if it seems like it's double work. For me, I like to conserve the amount of board that I'm using so that I can definitely get away with one board. But there isn't anything to say that you can't just take this, glue it down, and just start cutting by having them all glued down. But you can see you could conserve material if they're side by side. But I want to get through this one to show you how it finishes up. All right, again, I'm just taking my blade and scoring it, and now I'm going to go for my third time all the way through, and now you can see that I have a piece of foam core. I'm then now going to mount it this way, and you're always imagining you in the room looking at it. So I wouldn't do something like this. You're going to have every wall as if you're standing in the room and looking at it. And what you want to do is I'm lining it up with this, and I'm going to show you this inside line here. I'm taking this floor, let's see if you can get the shadow on it. Let me just get a little better light. So there's an inside line here. I want to make sure that you're lining it up so that that northeast corner and the line up with each other. Now I've got to pin this into my model, but it's a little tricky because I can pin it from the bottom to begin with, but it's easier if you have a second wall coming in. And because I've taken it this direction, I think what I'm going to do is on my north wall, I thought I might overlap it that way. I think I'm going to go with my north wall and make it as long as these. So that actually means I'm going to trim this back and then I'll pin it from this direction. So I'm going to trim that out. So I have the east wall. I'm going to line it up in this corner and I'm going to overlap the north wall so that I can pin it from this direction. And then this one here overlaps in the corner by the door, and that'll be good because this piece I can have it end into here, and then I'll have some surface to pin from the behind it. All right, so I'm going to stop talking and start cutting, and then I'll show you how the pinning will go together. Thought I had my pencil. Where did it go? I'm always losing things. That's okay. You guys understand, right? All right, so here's west. Don't worry where you label it. I'd say the main important thing is just to make sure that you're labeling it so you don't get mixed up. So south. These can always be erased later. I'm just doing it lightly in pencil. All right. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just putting it up along that top line, and I'm going to trim it. It's going to be right up along that top line. Right. Keep your fingers away from the edge. You're going to take your X-Acto knife, come back in and trim that up. We're going to do the same thing here, up along here. I'll throw this away so I don't get confused which piece is which and what do I still need. And again, I just want you to see that we've done the top, the bottom line and the top line right on the marker. So you want to check and see. If it's off in any way, then just reuse the idea of the width. You know how to measure now, but you've got to make it 8 foot high. Okay. So the biggest thing is if we planned on this east wall that this door would overlap, we said that the south wall, oops, oh wait, this way. This is the south wall with the doors. If this wall overlaps here, now we could have this just end here, and then let's have this one go all the way over. So what I would do is, we're gonna plan it, since the east wall we had go here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mark to cut here, and I'm gonna go all the way and mark it to go over here. And again, I'm making sure it's pretty, fairly straight. You could use your triangle again if you wanted. This one I knew I was gonna cut at the line. And I prefer to do this ahead of time because now I have the chance to not have to use as much material. And in this case, look how nice that is. I can keep it just to a small part of my material. I'm gonna go ahead and attach that down. Now, here's where I'm got the tape on the paper. This is what I'm talking about when you put the tape on the paper. If I put tape across here and it goes behind the door that I'm gonna cut out, I'm gonna lose all that. But my tape, it'll be a little wider than this, but you putting tape along this whole edge will help it hold down. So I'm gonna take it. And I know for some of you, it's just gonna be good to play this, to rewind it, to watch it again, and then some of the things will make a little bit more sense as you go through. But now we have your tape here. If you look at the back, my tape's actually coming to about here, but it's okay because that gives us a whole nice full edge. I'll do the same thing up along the top, and I think I'll come back on this side because that means on the back side I'd have tape along here and tape along here. Like you have an x-ray mind, you're trying to imagine it. Okay, I'm gonna line this up with the bottom edge here so that it is pretty square. I'm gonna start by putting my straight edge up along here. I've got a little bit of light issue coming here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just mark it on the foam core, make sure I can see it so I don't cut off my paper. I just put a little darker marks on the foam core. That way I'm not cutting off part of my wall. If you're concerned you are, like I said, you can just go ahead, take this entire wall, just tack it down to the board and then cut it at in that method. Right. So there's that. Now I planned it so that when I was on the south wall, let's see if you can see this. We've got the south wall. You can see how it lines up with the French doors, and we wanted to do that because we're viewing it from this side. You want to make sure you don't do it like backwards. You want to make sure like you're in the room. And then here was that east wall. This is coming up to the edge, and so remember, because I had my ceiling, the east didn't seem like it had a whole lot, but because I know my ceiling, I can now orient it and see how that east wall overlaps the south. That means I can pin into it, okay? I'll do one more thing though to show you how it will work with your doorway here. And I'm taking my straight edge. I want you to see why I was doing it with that highlighter and what it meant about the opening versus the trim work. But I do think it's good for our conversation, for the trim work that goes around doors and windows, for you to see how that's really just a cosmetic part of it. That's why you're always drawing it to your door openings or window openings, not where the trim is at. Just do the best job you can to try to keep it up along just the edge. Let me have gone over a little bit. Now sometimes you can see on the back if I've cut all the way through or not. Like here, there's a little bit that I have missing. So I'm just gonna do it from the back side. Just like that. And now I have the opening, and again, see where that would be with that trim work? That was all the part that I was highlighting in there. All right, let's start doing some pinning. I want to show you how these two walls look. This is the example of, see, like here, there's a little bit of glue, but from the double-sided tape. Keep these little pieces because these are things that you can use for your model building. All right, so I've got some pins to use. All right, so you've got your pins. And because I don't have any holes in this east wall, I'm going to do the east wall first. And again, I'm orienting myself in the room. I'm seeing that this is the east wall. And this is something where, if you can see, I'm going to hold it up to the inside corner of that wall and start pinning. Now I have a very special technique that I use, and it's called the pirate technique. Arr, matey. So what we're going to do is you take your piece of foam core and only with one eye line it up. If you try it with two, usually your pin will miss the foam core. So what I've done is I've put the pin through the back. I now oh, you got to get depth down too. Okay, let's try that again. I've got to see how much I can show you and how much I can do. I'll go this direction. I think I'll go closer to it, so I apologize. I have to kind of hold it in place here to see. I'll try to do it so you can see it. So I'm gonna do my technique with one eye, and I'm pushing it through the foam core into the foam core that's perpendicular for the wall, and I'm just pushing it down. There, we got it now. Now it's starting to hold it in place, but we need more than one. And again, remember, you're holding it up to that inside line. I say this is one of the hardest parts, is to get it here. And you can see it's up a little bit from the corner. So maybe doing that again, I might get that tape up even a little bit closer, but you're lining it up to the inside line of the room. Because when you get done with it and you measure it, you want to make sure it's still measuring what we started out with. It hasn't gained or lost a few inches. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm still holding my eye tight to the pirate, and I'm going to look, and I'm putting my pin through the bottom board and the perpendicular wall. Okay, so now I have something that's a little bit more stable, right? So there's the pins coming through the back. Right now I have two. I have it lining up along this inside edge is what you should have. And now I'm going to take the south piece, I'm going to line it in here, and I'm going to pin it from this side. So I'm glad you're bearing with me through this, because some of it doesn't make sense until you start putting things together. But like I say, once you start your model and you want to rewind it, it does help. I think what I'll do to get started is I'm actually going to pin it from the side. I'm lining it up with the inside wall, and I'm going to actually start it here just so I get an extra helping hand. Oh gosh, I grabbed two pins. That was silly. All right, I'm going to try two pins here to help. Now it helps hold it a little bit. Okay. And then I have my wall. So I'm starting to lay this out, and I pinned it there. I've got to get it on the floor, but I pinned it here it was a little bit easier for me to hold it. And then I'll make sure it lines up with the inside of the plan. I'm going to look at it from the side. See if I can get it to line up. Okay, so now I have it from the bottom. It's becoming more stable. I'm going to hold it up on the inside of this line over here and pin it from the bottom. So I'm going to hold it up. Now it'll start to get easier. Okay, so again, look through here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm setting it up so that I line the pin up. And I'm holding it from the bottom, and now it's a lot more stable. I think when I tap it, it moves a little. I'm gonna do one more from the bottom. There's no need to do glue on this because the pins will hold it just fine in place. So the glue can take a while to dry, so that's why we just use pins. Okay, so now it's getting steady. So when it says that the model, the way it's assessed, that it needs to stand on its own, that's pretty good. And then here in the corner, you can see, you can barely see the lines of it, but that's how I know it's square. And again, with the opening, see how you can tell where the molding is, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the last 2 walls and wrap up the video so you can see the full completion of it. I guess I'll keep the pins nearby here. And actually, I'm gonna put them back in the jar because they'll slide all over. Remove my blades. Again, you should be able to pretty much make it through this without having to change the blade. It should work out fine. Okay, oh, there was my pencil. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to slice off the top and the bottom, so along the ceiling, along the floor. Now, probably the fastest method would have been if I did that on every single one, all at the same time, kind of like a production method, but I wanted you to see in the steps how to begin, how to start building. You can come up with, you know, what you think is the best way. If I was just doing it to get it done quickly, I probably would have sliced the top and the bottom here and started out that way. And then you can go from there. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my sheets so I'm not confused. And what we have to do now is I'm going to look at the model. And you can see that along this wall, I'm going to need something to pin in here. And same thing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my north wall next, which is the wall with the windows. And luckily I wrote north on there. And remember, you're looking at it when you're in the room. So when it lines up, you want to make sure that it lines up here. I wrote floor, so this is good. I won't get it mixed up and have a much lower sill height. So you'll go ahead and you'll put it this way. And you want to line it up to the inside edge. Now I have a person here, and if I go past with the walls, it's just something I'm gonna use the walking person. So when I put this on my foam core, I'll just imagine that I'm gonna go farther out. But I can use my person and put them on a piece of foam core. And in fact, I'll go ahead and use that piece of foam core I used from my opening on my south wall. This time, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my tape. I'm going to put it on the back. I'm going to put it on the foam core. Okay, and I'm gonna cut it with it on there. You don't have to silhouette cut the person. Just do a rectangle, so it's just a fast process. If you want to highlight the outline, because our model's in white, you could just do the figure in like a dark gray or a black if you really wanted the person to stand out and it being a little more dramatic. But you'll do something like this. And I'll come back with a couple pins. I don't know if I'm going to like having the person. I'll wait. I think I'm going to wait to have the person in there till I get my walls in, but I'll put a couple pins. Don't need to be voodoo, but all right. Now, I was doing a lot of my walls on this section here. I needed to make sure I had enough overlap. And you can see I do have overlap. So when it comes here, there will be enough to pin in. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing there. But I'm going to keep in mind the fact that I'm not going to put my tape on the back side in areas where I know that this window is at. But anytime there's a cut area, I'm going to put it up along the perimeter though, so it doesn't lift up. I'm going to put it up along the, I'm doing it pretty much around the border of my window because I can see through to the back, and that way it'll hold on. And then I've got to go closer over to my edge here. So I'd say the trickiest thing about the model is just planning ahead and making sure that you have enough surface to tape down, and for overlapping, that's important. Okay. All right. So I've got a collection of tape on the back. I know that this was a decent width here. Okay, I'm putting it down. Again, I lined up the paper along the bottom edge. And this one, it overhangs. I can just trim that off. I can even just do it from the back. And I knew I had enough overlapping on either edge for when I had it on the wall. So now I'll go ahead and I'm going to trim the ceiling. I'm going to give myself some marks again, just because when you put that solid ruler, it's a little trickier to see. So I'm just giving myself 2 marks so that I know the line to follow. I'm scoring it, running it a second time, and it even pops off at the second time. What I'll do is I'm going to go ahead, and again, I'm making sure the ceiling's on top. I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to pin. But before I do that, I'm going to cut out my wall. A little bit more like that production method we talked about. And at this point, just to be quick about it, I'm going to not worry about trimming off my edges. I already know I have my person, so I'm not going to worry about my standing person. I'm just going to get the parts on here around the edge. On the south wall, in this case, actually, I'm just going to only cut it as long as the pieces, because this is coming over and this is coming over, so I can pin it from this way and I can pin it from this way. So I'm just going to cut it exactly as it's drawn, both on the ceiling line, the floor line, and the side. So I'm going to put my tape all the way around the side. I'm getting a little bit of that waffle there, so I just wanted to try to avoid that. Okay. I'm going around my door opening because I know that that tape will be wasted. Not only wasted, but also now I won't have a good adhesive surface to make sure that my paper isn't lifting away from my model. Oops, my foam core. I'm going to lay this down. I don't really have a straight edge anymore, so I'm going to cut both of these, but I'm going to start out by just simply doing my ceiling line and floor line. Okay. Again, I'm running it, I'm scoring it, I'm not trying to get through all in the first time. Okay. And then I'll come in and I'm going to go right up along each edge of it. So plan, plan, plan. Don't take every wall and cut it up, and cut it up along the edge. Got a little crazy there with the knife on the metal, is what that noise was. But the biggest thing is I would suggest that you watch this entire video before you start. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but watch the entire video first before you start cutting. I mean, I'd suggest looking at the pieces and so forth and see what I'm talking about, but it's really going to be best if you take it and you just put it together. So I'm going to set my foam core aside for right now. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out the openings on my door. your time. And when you put it in, I'd suggest poke it right at that inside corner of the door, and then you'll pull it down from there. You know, do it kind of like you're thinking of like drawing a line with a pencil. And then here, because there's not as much surface for it to lay that way, I'd go ahead and I'm gonna hold it up along the side that gives me a more flat edge. I'm just doing inside corner to inside corner. And then I'm looking at the back, and I can see there wasn't a little bit that wasn't cut. There we go. So now I have the inside corner for that wall. Look for that 2-foot sill height for your window. Oops. Why didn't you put on that? All right, I lost a little bit of my trim molding. Going at that 2-foot distance of the sill off the floor. Okay, let's see how we did. Pop out the window. Oh, needs a little bit of some work on the back here. I think it's kind of better if it's shy, that way you don't cut too far into it. It's easy to tack it from the back. And then I lost a little bit of it over here. It's not a huge deal. I could put more double-sided tape down. You could do a little glue in that case, but it's not a big deal. But I just want you to see how you're gonna make sure you have that 2-foot sill height from here. So make sure you cut away from that trim work. And we're gonna pin in the rest. I'm lining it up on the inside of the floor, and I'm going to pin it in place. This time I'm going to, you know what, I think I'm going to do that where I did it from the side. I'm lining it up with the inside line of the room. Give me a little more stability, kind of like that. Again, I'm just still using one eye. You can see my face scrunching up. Still doing that. That gives me a little bit more stability, a little easier for me to hold on to it. Again, I'm running it on the inside floor line. And I'm going to come in and just that back wall. Imagine this going through. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put this in place down here. Hold that down. Do another pinning. So I did the 2 pins, yeah, 2, and now it's relatively stable. So just think of like the structure. These have to rest into one another. Now I'm going to do this wall, and when I do it, I'm going to make sure it lines up with that marker on the drawing. If I did this, see how it would be over in the wrong location? That would help you see if you didn't write ceiling and floor. But you go ahead and you're going to line that inside corner there. I think I'll do the same thing again with my side walls for support as I get starting to pin it from the bottom. Now this one's going to be trickier because the pin's longer than the door, so I'm going to do it in what we would consider like the bulkhead area above, so I'm pinning it up in here. And in this case, actually, let's see, I don't know, maybe I don't need to do from the bottom. I think I'll go ahead and just do it from the bottom, not from the side. Okay, pin that in. It's getting pretty easy now. Make sure this corner matches up. And it looks like if I was doing it like this, it's gonna angle a little, so I'm gonna do a pin from this side as well. Okay. Because when you get done with it, you want the wall to be square. You shouldn't be seeing a gap. Okay. And then we need some from the bottom. Okay, there's one there. And it looks like I had another one over there. Okay, so now the model is nice and sturdy. I'm going to do my person now because we want to have an understanding of the scale. You can put the person anywhere you want in the room. I think I'm going to just push the pin in from the bottom. I just push the pin in from the bottom. You can see that. And I'm going to hold it, and I'm just going to slip my person on there. And it's actually kind of cool with one pin. I can actually kind of have the person dance in there if I wanted. Okay, so there's your person. The very last thing that it indicates in the directions, and I can put away my pens now. The last thing, so you'd want to check it and make sure that it measures the distance that we had. Okay, you want to be within pretty close. So like this one is 13, 6.5, and this one is your 12. That's pretty much right on 12.6. 12, 6.5, 12, 7. So within a couple inches. I mean, models are much more difficult, but you can see now where some of that is, right? You can see like the door opening. You can see the person. You can tell more how that east wall is quite blank. You've got the window here. And the last thing to do then, and it calls us in the directions, is to provide a ceiling for your model. Because what I'm going to put that on, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Usually what I'll do is I just, let's just come up with something that we know is a little bigger than this. You could use like some duct tape if you want to have it like a flap. So because I know this is square, I just marked it so that I know it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to do this like so. You can tell my blade's getting a little duller. I scraped it along this, so I think it kind of dulled it. So when I would get started to work on my furniture in the next part of our project, I'd probably change out the blade. Okay, so now we understand that we have a ceiling. So you can make it a little bit bigger than the model. You could do it if you wanted it as one pin, but when you take the picture of your model, I'm going to need to see it, you know, with it off. But if you you could do something like that, and you could turn it that way if you wanted, kind of take it up. Like I say, I have seen people do it where they do like duct tape and they make it like a flap, so it flaps open. But when you do this, this is what I want you to see. Okay, so here's the amount of light. Look at what it looks like when you're looking in the room. It's not necessarily as much light as we think. And if we play around with, let's say, the way that the light, I don't know, I can't do it at the same time. But the light's going to come in from a certain direction. Like here, we kind of see it's all lit up. But when you look at it, and I'm going to try to have you look through, I guess we'll look through this. See how it looks dramatically different even when I have a lot of light coming in from that side view. And you'll be able to get to enjoy this a little more when you get to hold it and model it yourself. But see, it's not as quite as bright as when I have my ceiling going. So that helps us realize what is the space we really have to work with and make sure we have plenty of good artificial light when there's not natural light coming in. All right, and it's north facing, so there's not a lot there. All right, you guys, this is the model. Can't wait to see that you've got yours together. Okay, see you in class.